Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on reversing the trend of veteran suicide, homelessness, and problematic transitions by helping veterans transition from military to civilian life and strengthening the mental fitness of our active duty military, veterans, and their families. Our show is a Charlie and Mike channel production powered by Pivotal Moments Media, an organization on a mission to strengthen mental fitness worldwide for all. Go check them out at pivotalmomentsmedia.com to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen. We're privileged to have U.S. Army Colonel retired Kirby Watson with us today. Colonel Watson had a magnificent 33-plus year career as an Army signal officer, where he served in various Army and joint assignments. Kirby commanded multiple times at every leadership level that culminated with his brigade-level command of the Joint Communications Support Element located at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa Bay, Florida. Also of significance was Kirby's command of the Special Missions Command, part of the White House Communications Agency during the President Bush 43 administration. Kirby and his command provided direct communications to President Bush, his senior White House staff, and all White House community of interest elements when President Bush traveled to Camp David, his ranch at Crawford, Texas, his father's home in Kennebunkport, Maine, or any other special trips that President Bush chose to make. Kirby currently works as the director for Iridium, I've been practicing that, Iridium Satellite Communications, and he has this position for the last 3+ years. He's been in that position for 3+ years. Wow. Kirby holds a bachelor's degree in physics from Lycoming College and a master's of arts degree in organizational management from the University of Phoenix. And Kirby is also a graduate of the Army War College at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. Kirby, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Welcome to Life After the Military.
Well, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Howie. I guess, first of all, I should say I am humbled and greatly appreciative of the opportunity to be on your podcast. And, I just want to take an opportunity to thank you and Howie for everything you guys are doing for veterans, and anybody else that might listen to the podcast. I've been blessed to have the opportunity to watch several of the shows, and I just really appreciate everything you guys are doing.
I appreciate that, Kirby. I'll tell you, and not to speak for you, Howie, but it is one of the greatest honors of my podcast.
Why would you not speak for me now, Lee?
I'll speak for you, man. Kirby, I've always liked you. I've known you a long time. I'm speaking for Howie now. I don't actually know you that well. No, Kirby, listen, it's an honor to be able to bring these stories to the forefront for me. Again, as a former military spouse, I've said this, that I've always had an affinity for the military. I've always revered the military and the members of the military. So every episode and every opportunity that I have a chance to share a story or share your service and your volunteer work it's an honor for me. I really mean that from episode 1 till now. So thank you again for being here. And with that, I'm going to jump into our first question. I said it in the open. You had a career as an Army signal officer for over 33 years. After 33 years, tell us what you did or right at the end there to prepare for your transition out of the Army to the private sector. What went well, what didn't go well, and what would you have done differently if you know what you know now?
Sure. No, absolutely. So, I'll kind of break this into 3 chunks, kind of what I did. And then I've, just like you said, I've got some things that, I did not do well. And if people can learn from my mistakes, that's be a great lesson. And then I got a couple of things that I think that did go well. And I'll be the first one to tell you some of those things that went well were a complete accident, but just kind of walk through that a little bit. And so I guess I would start by saying, it's like everything else, you start with the basics, do the basics well first. And, the military has a lot of great programs to make sure you take advantage of. And, the first one that comes to mind is the TAP program, obviously. So I had a very supportive boss. I was the joint staff for I was the chief of staff for the joint staff J6, and really busy job. And my boss pulled me aside and said, look, you have to take time to do this stuff. You got to go.
Wow,
do
really,
this.
Kirby?
Yep, sure did.
That is rare. For a senior officer to tell another senior officer that is rare right there. So, wow.
Yep, great leader. I mean, that's I guess as I go through my different stories, there's always leadership nuggets to grab here, and to me, that's one of them. He gave me the opportunity to go do that type of stuff, and TAP was a great program. They had daily above and beyond TAP. There were classes you could take if you wanted to start your own business, if you wanted to apply to the U.S. government, how to do online applications. So they had all these other things you could do above and beyond TAP. But
was this in the Pentagon, Kirby?
This is in the Pentagon.
Yeah,
Yep.
interesting.
Well, and
Because,
actually, I
that
took
it's
it.
not my experience in a lot of the other TAP programs. And it's interesting that in the Pentagon, it's run that well, because that is
Yeah.
not consistent across the entire
And
Army.
and it needs to be.
It needs to be. It's because I'll be honest, we don't know what we don't know, and we're just we have a lot of great training, but how to move out into the civilian world is not one of them, right? Till you get to the last year, and so I took advantage of those opportunities. I had been in the Pentagon. I'd have different mentors show up at different times, and they were already retired. They were in the Pentagon, and so I took the opportunity to say, "Hey, look, can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Can you help me think through this? I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, and I just need some help." And people always told me to use your mentorship network, and I'm like, I don't really have a mentorship network. I don't have people, and I was completely wrong. There are people coming out of the woodwork that will help you out, and so I took advantage of that being at the Pentagon. I took the VA program seriously. I got my medical records a year out. I started going through them page by page. I made sure I made my appointments. And then, really the last step is I began the whole job search process. And so that was kind of the framework I worked under. And now, to kind of get into some of the lessons learned a little bit. So I'll start with what I did wrong. First, I will tell you, I was all over the map. And I think at some degree, we'll all start like that because we don't know what we want to do. We don't know where we want to be. But I was looking at nonprofits. I was looking at colleges. I was looking on job websites. I was looking in Florida, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia. And I'm telling you, I really was getting to the point I felt a little overwhelmed, to be quite frank. And I know we'll talk about mental health a little bit later, but I was really feeling overwhelmed because I did not do a good job of kind of shrinking that search pool down a little bit. And so, the sooner you can do that, I think better. One thing that helped us is we decided we were going to stay in Maryland. So, or in Virginia. So that took some of that stuff off the table. Right. And so that started helping. I had mixed success with online applications, and you'll see when I get into things that went right, how I kind of righted the ship a little bit, and maybe, that helped somebody else listening. I scheduled too many interviews. I was nervous about getting a job. And so I had a mentor that said, take every interview you can get. It's good practice. And it was just too busy, too much work. And I'll explain that a little bit more about what I did to prep for the interviews that made it so busy. But, part of that was all a factor of not narrowing things down. I took interviews for jobs I knew I wouldn't take, right? Because somebody told me I need to practice. It is just a personal opinion, but I think after about one or two interviews, I'm not sure, that was great advice.
If I may, if
Go
I
ahead,
may, I'll say this for you. It's great advice if you're 22 years old, graduating college.
There you go. Yep.
If you've served in the military for 33 years, I agree with you. One or two, you're going to have it down because you're an adult. You've had these conversations. If real quick, if you feel like you don't have the experience for an interview, do mock interviews. And I bet everyone here has a friend that would do a mock interview or a business owner and say, go hard on me. Because if you can find someone, to your point, Kirby, that will go hard at that's actually what they did for me in college. Was the hardest interviews I ever had was with my mentors in college. So the actual interviews were easy. But I just wanted to support you there because that is a misnomer of take as many as you can. You'll be a slave to your calendar, man, if you do that.
Yep. That's exactly what happened to me between prep time and I'll go over what I did to prep for interviews, but it's just huge time sink. I'll tell you a mistake I made. I didn't let people know I was getting out until the retirement ceremony. And I would just tell you why. And hopefully in telling this story, people will think differently about folks that are getting out. And I don't know if you experienced this, Howie, but when I was in the Pentagon and even growing up in the Army, it almost felt like when somebody said they were going to retire or get out, it almost felt like, they got put into this pool of, oh, well, there's a quitter. They're getting out. They're doing something else. I mean, I watched Yeah, I watched colonels get almost ostracized because they decided they were getting out after 25 years of service. I'm like, are you kidding me? This person served 25 years and now they're no good to you because they decided they were going to get out and move on. And I saw that, I'm embarrassed to say I saw that many more times than once. And so maybe that was hanging over my head. I don't know, but I did not want people to know maybe I felt like, hey, I didn't make general officer. So, I was a failure. I don't know what mentally was going on, but I'm just saying I didn't let people know. And I don't know how, if you saw the same type of things, but
So I listen. I was at a point. It's a very interesting perception and perspective, and thank you for sharing that, Kirby. Because I'm sure there are a number of senior NCOs and officers that go through that, and I'll tell you, just hearing that a senior officer above you might even consider looking at you that way. I got to be honest with you, just really pisses me off, because there is nobody that I know of who did more for his country and gave more to the units he served in than you did. And so to anybody, and I don't know whether they did or not, but anybody who would even consider that you were a quitter, that you were packing it in, that's just bullshit in my mind. Now, I will tell you, I did not feel that way, and I'll tell you why I didn't feel that way. I had my looks at general officer and I didn't make it, right? Which is fine. That's absolutely okay. But at that point, I was not going to hang around. And I've seen people who've done this, right? Hanging around thinking they can make it after their main looks were there. Now, if that's truly what I wanted to do for another 2, 3, 4 years, that's fine. But that's not what I wanted to do. Right. Once my military career was over, and once I had my best look at getting promoted, I knew it was essentially over. Because look, what was I going to do at that point, man? I commanded a brigade. I commanded the White House Communications Agency. What the hell was I going to do that was going to be better than what I had just done? Nothing. I was going to be a staff officer someplace, right? Just marking time. And that's not the way I wanted to spend those years of my life, right? So it was very easy for me to come to the conclusion that, okay, that's cool. My time is over. Let's move on and let's figure out what the next step is. And to be very frank with you, and I didn't hear that. If anybody thought that, I could give a shit less. Right. I really could not care less, because I knew it was best for me. And I knew it was best for my family. And that's the point I want to make right here. And God bless you, because that's the kind of guy you are, right? But the bottom line for those out there that may be feeling what Kirby felt, the bottom line is compete for that next promotion, compete for that next assignment that you want to do. But if you don't get it, and you feel like the next step is to move out and move on to something else, then you got to do what's right for you. And you got to do what's right for your family. And that's not, when I say put yourself first, I don't mean that in a selfish way. You've given a lot of your time, effort, energy, and blood to the military. And at a point in time, look, everybody's career ends at some point. I don't care if you're a 4-star general. I don't care if you're the sergeant major of the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the senior chief. It doesn't matter. Everybody's career is going to end at some point. The advice I got, and maybe this is why I didn't feel this way, Kirby, it was actually Dave Bryant, Major General retired Dave Bryant. His advice to me was, Howie, you decide, you pick your time. Don't let somebody else pick your time. And that stuck in the front of my mind always. And I knew when my time came up that I was calling my own shots, and I really didn't care what anybody else thought. But
and that's exactly the point I wanted to make sure people hear, and why I brought that up. And I had, as I said earlier, I had an extremely supportive chain of command. So it wasn't anything that they did whatsoever. It was baggage I was carrying around probably since the time I was a captain and just watching things. Sure. And so
we always heard that term, road, right? Retired on active duty. I mean, I grew up with that same term, Kirby, but that does not fit you. not in any freaking sense of the definition of that acronym. A retired on active duty was someone who was on active duty that had just completely cashed it in. He wasn't showing up for PT. He wasn't taking any responsibilities. He was not holding himself accountable. That was not Kirby Watson. right?
Let me jump in here too, guys. So just listen to your discussion. Howie, you've always had I've noticed this about you since I've met you. You've always had a really strong conscious of, I'm going to do what I think is best for my family and myself. I've always actually admired that about you heavily. Kirby, I'm sure you share that as well. But I do know there are members of the military that are not that conscious. And what I mean by this, it's not a bad thing, but it might be inward thinking, not so much external thinking. So when you get that stigma or that pressure, right? I always say, take a step back and just prioritize what's important in your life. If you're feeling that pressure, it's not that you're prioritizing wrong, but you're probably not looking at your priorities. You're just kind of internalizing it. Yeah. I have yet to meet a military member whose family is not the top priority outside the mission.
Unfortunately, I have, Lee.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's unfortunate.
It is. But the point I'm making is that when you come to that transition point, if you feel any mental fear, if you feel any of that, right, sit down and prioritize what's important to you. It will help you guide through that feeling. It'll help you guide past it. Because Howie, like you said, Kirby, you too, like if someone was pressuring, like you're a quitter, if your family is the number one priority, you'll be able to get past that. It'll hurt, but you'll be able to get past it. I just wanted to make the, we've always been so conscious of that, Howie.
And even if you go back, like a Kirby, I'm sure you had something very similar. If you go back to my command philosophy and all the different commands I had, right? One of the things I talked to newcomers in the newcomers brief was you got to put yourself first. You got to take care of yourself first. Now, that was not from a selfish point of view, is you got to eat right. You've got to get enough sleep. You've got to do physical training every day. You've got to read. You've got to spend some time, meditate, or spend some time on building your mental fitness, your physical fitness, your emotional fitness, your spiritual fitness. Because if you do that stuff, right, you're better prepared to take care of the men and women under your command. If you don't do that stuff, then you may be a liability to them. So when I say put yourself first or take care of yourself first in the uniform, it's so that you can take better care of the men and women under your charge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, Howie. I'm a reader of Dave Ramsey's financial books, just to tell you. And so one of the things he talks about is, if you don't take care of yourself, you're not in a position to help other people, right? Exactly. And so it's the same philosophy in leadership. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be there for the people that need you. And it's the same thing with your family, right?
Right.
You can't help your family,
especially your family,
take care of yourself.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, listen, we didn't mean to distract you. You were on a great roll there, man. I love everything you're saying right now. This is absolute a gold mine of information you're sharing right now. So please continue, Kirby.
Yeah. So, now I'll move into some things that I feel like I got right. And, I don't say these in a way to take credit. Some of them are complete accident, right? You just stumble into the right path. And so I will tell you, and you're going to hear this theme throughout this conversation, is I think the first and best decision I made was, I wasn't looking for a particular type of job. I wasn't looking for a location. I decided that my number one criteria was going to be finding a good team. And so, we've been in similar units, and some of those units take us to places that aren't very nice and have a lot of stress, and there's a lot of things going on. But when you're with a good team, you can manage all of that, right? And a good team brings everybody higher. And so, that was top of my criteria. And so as we go into, other questions and discussions, you're going to hear that come back over and over again, is I didn't care so much what I did, but I wanted to do it with a good set of people. And so that probably set me on a good path. We've already talked the fact that I took advantage of the TAP programs and the other things like that. The medical prep we talked about, I took, on your physical, that when you get out, there's this little box on there that says, hey, what's bothering you today? And for 29 years, I put nothing, because I said, first thing they're going to do is they're going to want to take me off jump status, or, they're going to want to give me a profile, and I can't do PT with the troops. And so I did not fill that thing out for 29 years. And so finally, I took my medical records, went page by page, filled that box out. And I watched my doctor in my retirement physical, which is really a misnomer. I don't think the doctor even touched me on my retirement physical, but she took that list of things, transferred them over to her paperwork, And then I watched the VSO who does my VA stuff, take her list of stuff and transfer it over to his paperwork. And so it all started with the homework I did. And so I would encourage people to take the time. There's things I was flipping through there and go, I don't remember twisting my ankle on a jump, but sure enough, right here it is, and you have all these things you just forgot about. And so I made sure I documented that stuff. We already talked about the lunches I did with the mentors. We talked earlier about, my initial frustration with online applications. I'll tell you what turned that around for me is what I figured out was I had a hard time getting through. I don't know if I wasn't doing the online apps right, if, I wasn't getting through the computer searches. I don't know what the problem was, but what seemed to change it was, well, I'll use an example. Say I applied to Microsoft. I went on my LinkedIn account and I found a buddy that worked at Microsoft. And I told him I was applying and they would do these, quote, internal referral things. And then I found all of a sudden, these online applications that were getting nowhere, I started getting responses from them. So, that brings me to, I guess, my my LinkedIn pitch. I use LinkedIn for two things, really. One, it was these applications. And the other thing I did was before an interview, I would get on LinkedIn and I'd find somebody that worked for that company. And I was absolutely amazed. I don't feel like I had this massive LinkedIn account. However, I don't have one example of not being able to find somebody I knew in the Army that was working in some regard with this company. And I would call them, and this goes to your mentorship network. There's not a single person that wasn't brutally honest with me about the place they worked, to the point where I had people say, don't come here. And so my point is, as you're preparing to get out, the people you work with, make sure you put them in your LinkedIn account if that's the tool you use. When you meet somebody on the road, put them in your LinkedIn account. And I was really surprised that I could find somebody from even I talked to Amazons, I talked to people from Microsoft. I could always find these people in LinkedIn. And so your buddies, your friends, your mentors are going to be invaluable to you. And this thing that I thought didn't even exist for me turned out to be an extremely valuable tool as I was going through this process. And then go ahead, Howie.
Well, no, listen, that's a good place to pause. And again, I want to get back to your next point, but I just want to reinforce something. So I want our audience to understand what's going on here, right? Because I beat these 3 points every time I talk to in a networking event or whatever. But number one, what did Kirby do? He asked for help, right? And if you're not asking for help, it's a mistake. I will tell you right now, and I don't care whether you're a general officer, I don't care if you're a command sergeant major or a senior enlisted, I don't care what you've done, what unit you've been in, you are not prepared to go through the transition process by yourself. Just trust me on this. You are not prepared to do it. So don't let arrogance or overconfidence get in your way. Ask for help, all right? Number two, he took ownership of the process, complete ownership of the process. Here's another thing I see with some people as I sit in on some of these networking events is some people expect, because they reach out to a VSO, a veteran service organization, that they're going to do all the work for them. They're not there to do the work for you. They're there to connect you, to be a tool for you to use, but they're not there to do all the work for you and find you your job. They're a resource for you, but they're not there to do your job for you. You have to own the process, right? Or take responsibility for the process. The third thing he did is he put in the work. Listen to what he just told you. He used LinkedIn magnificently, which is, if I cannot tell you how many times I've been on LinkedIn and watched VSO personnel give the advice that Kirby and what's amazing to me is, Kirby, did you have anybody helping you, like figured all this stuff out, or you figured this out on your own?
Well, besides the mentors and things I talked to, right? A lot of it, the online thing, I found that out on my own because I made a mistake.
That's amazing. Because listen, most people don't intuitively pick stuff like that up. right? But whether someone is advising you to do it or you're doing it on your own, it is the absolute right thing to do. LinkedIn is probably going to be the best networking tool you'll ever have. The best platform is designed to help you do company research, find people, do exactly what Kirby just described. If you want to go work for a company, go find people who work in that company and are doing what you want to do and talk to them. Have that quote unquote cup of coffee, have that informational interview, and you will find out tons of information that'll either let you know, yes, I want to do that job. No, I don't want to do that job. Yes, I want to work for that company. No, I don't want to work for that company. And so now you can start narrowing things down at scale right at your computer in your own house.
Right? I want to say this too. This is good advice for anyone looking for a job. And I'm saying that for a reason, right? Because this is the commonplace in the civilian sector, right? So for everybody transitioning, this is good advice for anyone looking for a job. There's not an exception to that if you served in the military. In fact, it's even easier for you in a lot of ways. But I just want to say, Howie, it's good advice for anyone.
Well, and listen, here's the other thing that I've come to believe too, is you don't even have to wait till a year or 2 years out, right? Yeah. I would I would encourage, as soon as you get in the military. I mean, it sounds crazy, I know, but start preparing for your transition as soon as you get in the military. Get on LinkedIn, start setting up your profile, start your networking, start developing trust relationships. And over the course of a 4-year career, a 10-year career, a 14-year career, a 24-year career, whatever, you will build up such a deep, such a broad, such a valuable, trusted network that when now it's time for you to transition, you are going to be so ahead of the game. So I literally would start recommending actually for you. I don't care how young you are, what rank you are, what service you're in, what assignment you're in. Start working on developing and improving your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn network. It will pay huge dividends down the road when you get out. Yep. So Kirby, back to you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get on the soapbox here, but there's so many things I've learned in the last couple months that I just want to reinforce for our audience, because to me, it's all about how can we help them have a low stress and a very highly successful transition. So I just want to reinforce that you're doing amazing. You did amazing things here, and I just want to reinforce those points.
Hey, Kirby, I just want you to know that every week Howie teases me for talking too much. Every single episode. No, Howie, I'm totally teasing you, man. Everything you're saying is spot on.
No, absolutely.
All right, I'm going on mute, man.
I only have 1 point left, Howie and Lee, on this topic. And so it's the last point's about the interview prep, which we've talked about a little bit already. And this feeds into why I was getting overwhelmed with taking every interview that came across the plate. I thought I was doing the right thing. It's actually what I was told to do by several folks. And here's why, just in my opinion, I think it's not quite right. And so to me, to do the interview correctly, here's kind of the steps I went through. So when I found out I had an interview with a company, I went to Google and I researched the company, first of all. Tried to figure out something about the company, tried to understand what they do. I want to go in there and not even understand, what I was doing. I will tell you, and I'll tell you this little anecdote. When I got out of college, I had about 4 months before I came in the Army. And I said, I went to a temp agency and said, look, I need something to do for 4 months before I go in the Army. And they said, fine, go to this address and interview. So I put a suit on. I go down by this river in this trailer, and I'm interviewing for this job. And my mentality was, look, I can do anything for 4 months. I mean, you're not going to break me in 4 months. And so I'm 20 minutes into this interview, and the lady stops and she goes, do you have any idea what you're interviewing for? And I said, well, not really. But I said, I can do anything. So she said, turn around. So I literally turned around in my chair, and this paddle wheel boat was pulling up to the dock. And she goes, we need a crew member for this paddle wheel boat. I'm like, I can do that. But the point is, I went to this interview. I didn't even know what the job was. And so, my point to this story is, I go online, I researched the company. I tried to figure out something about them. I got on the LinkedIn, as we talked about earlier. I found somebody that worked for the company, talked to them, tried to get their sense, what they liked, what they didn't like. And then I went in on LinkedIn, and if I couldn't find the interviewer on LinkedIn, I could find them on Google probably. And I read their bio, and you'd be amazed. We always say the Army is a small place. The world's a small place. I could find, maybe it was a university we went to together. Maybe it was master's degree. Maybe we're from the same home state or even town. Maybe they know somebody that I know on LinkedIn. And I always had these little nuggets in my pocket that could be either an icebreaker, could get things moving, could get me out of a jam if I felt like I was in trouble at the interview, just something. And so, again, I used LinkedIn to do that type of stuff. And then the last thing, I also used it I took the attitude that, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, from the sense that I was looking for a good team. And so, and I have this later on, but, trust your gut in those situations. You don't get a lot of time. Maybe you have an hour interview. Maybe you get to go to lunch with somebody, and that's the interview setting. You don't have a lot of time to make this decision. But, you need to do the best you can. Because I would tell you, my wife is great at this. She gets the sense about people very, very quickly. Maybe I'm a little more naive. I don't know. Maybe I'm just slower. I don't know. It takes me a little longer. But my point is, get to know the interviewer, and that's part of your step on deciding if you're getting on a good team or not. And so that was kind of my interview prep, and people can take what they want from that. But that was sort of my list of things I felt like went fairly well.
Did you get the paddle dock job?
I did. So I worked on a paddle wheel boat rolling up and down a place called the Susquehanna River for 90
Susquehanna
days.
Hats, man. Do you guys ever watch Abbott and Costello, the Susquehanna Hats, man?
Yeah. So
I've been sitting on the edge of my seat waiting to hear if you got this job or not, man, for 4 months.
That was a great job. We played up.
I bet you weren't wearing that suit though.
Well, I know I didn't wear the suit for the job, but we did going up the river. We played the history of the Susquehanna River, and coming down the river, we played Creedence Clearwater Revival, Proud Mary. And
oh man,
I have heard that song I don't know how many times. Every trip on that paddle wheel boat, we learned, I listened to that tape front and back side. Funny. So, but it was a good experience.
Hey, I want to reinforce a couple more points here that Kirby made, right? And I want to key in on the criteria he used for selecting the company he selected. It just so happens that was exactly the same criteria, the number one criteria I used, and that was the culture of the organization that I was interviewing with, right? And Kirby, I know you well enough to know that I think we should probably share this. I knew that if I went to work for an organization whose leadership didn't share the same core values that I shared, I don't care how much you paid me. I don't care what kind of benefits you have. I don't care what kind of upward mobility I had. If you guys weren't operating with the same core values that I operate by, I was going to be miserable and it wasn't going to work. And it sounds like you had exactly the same perspective going in. And listen, that's why you're with the same company as long as you are right now. And that's why I was with Morgan Franklin Corporation for 6 years until they sold off my business unit to another company. So I just reinforce that for our audience, because though, I know sometimes you kind of get hey, I can make more money. And listen, money's important. I'm not saying it's not important. Money is very important. Benefits are very important. Education is very important. All those things. But for me, and I would encourage for most people, pick a company whose core values are consistent with yours, and you're likely going to make a good choice there.
My only caveat is it's not a caveat. It's not what you do, it's who you do it with.
Yep.
I've told this story before. I have worked at some of the top places in my industry, and I was miserable because the people there were miserable. And I've worked at some of the not highest places and been extremely happy because the people there were great. It's not what you do, it's who you do it with.
Yeah. Hey, and Kirby, you kind of triggered something in my mind I had never thought about before, but I love the fact that you were so detailed in your preparation for your final out, your medical appointment, right? As I look back, that's something I could have done a lot better. And let me be very specific of what I'm talking about, right? I definitely keyed in on all the physical ailments, right? Because I was like you, right? I mean, there was rare that I went on sick call. It was rare, unless something was really wrong. I wasn't reporting into the medical clinic, right? For the same reasons you described. But here's something I did not do, right? And I'm going to be very transparent with our audience right now. And this is not the first time. I never once talked about any of my mental challenges. Never once. Not one freaking time. Why? Because like you, I carried a top secret, specially compartmented information clearance the majority of my career. Like you, I would not have, I was concerned that I would lose my TSSCI clearance. I was concerned I wouldn't get access to the organizations I got access to. I wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that gave me the greatest joy and sense of purpose that I did in my military career. I didn't want to put any of that at risk. So I never once told anybody about some of the challenges, the mental challenges I was facing in my career. Never once. And you know what? Here's where I missed the boat. And I didn't think about it until I was listening to you. What I could have done and what I should have done, if I was really thinking, was in that final out, I should have laid it all out for that freaking doctor and say, hey, you know what? I'm getting out, but let me tell you what I've been dealing with for the last fucking 27 years. And then I wasn't willing to talk to anybody about it because of what I just explained to you. Right. And boy, did I miss the boat right there, man, because I have nothing documented in my medical history for any of that stuff while I was on active duty. Right. So I just throw that out to the audience because I didn't think to do that. And if you are making the same choices I made, and I don't blame you for doing that, then you know what? Take that final opportunity in your final out, medical out processing appointment and just lay it all out on the line and let them figure it out, but lay it out there for them, man,
Yep. I agree. Yep. Absolutely.
Oh, so I guess it's my time, my question, huh, Lee?
I mean, I can always talk if you like, Howie, I've been told not to talk so much. By the way, the listening audience, Howie and I love each other. So don't ever.
We do. I have so much respect for this man here.
But it's mutual.
Well, hey, so Kirby, listen, what I would really like for you to share with the audience, because you're working in the government contracting field, right?
Yeah.
And so part of my motive for when the guests that I bring on is based on what they do. I find that could be helpful if you describe the work you're doing, the lessons you've learned there. So, and because I know I had a significant amount of challenges going into the government contracting field of work. So please share your advice and guidance. If someone in the audience is looking to do government contracting, what have you learned? What would you tell them that maybe they could be better prepared, certainly than I was, and maybe even than you were, right, of going into that field? Because it's a challenging transition just going into the government contracting space. So what would you share with them?
Yeah, so I'd share a couple of things. So first of all, I would tell them, look, it's a change, but you have all the tools in your toolbox you need, right? So in one side, you want to be confident in those abilities, but on the other side, you want to be humble. So, one of the things I learned, for example, is, I had managed budgets for, at least the last third of my career. And I thought I kind of understood money. And I kind of realized, I don't understand money like a publicly traded company talks about money. I just didn't understand that. But that's getting to this point is, learn the language of the organization you're in. And I'll use this story. My hardest transition inside the Army was moving to the Pentagon. And it's because, I'd sit in a 2-hour meeting and maybe absorb a third of what they said, because I had been in the Army 27 years. And I'm telling you, the Pentagon has its own language. They have their meetings are called different things. Products you put together are called different things. And it just felt like it took me forever, just to get to a level where I understood what they're saying. And then underneath that, there's a deeper level of what are the implications of what they're saying, right? What panels or boards does this product have to get to? What is this process this thing has to go through? my point is that building has a language that I didn't learn until I got there. And your company is going to be the same thing. I'm a communications guy. So I sat in, first couple of days in Iridium, and I'm sitting in these meetings and they're talking about IP. And I'm like, I got this. This is internet protocol. And I'm right in this conversation. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, why can I not follow what these guys are telling me? And finally, the second meeting, I finally said, when you guys say IP, what are you talking about? Because I'm just not following this conversation. So point one, ask the question, right? Especially as a new guy. Don't blow that new guy status by not asking questions, because that question is more embarrassing a year after you're at the company, right? So they're like, well, we're talking about intellectual property. I'm like, that's why I don't understand this conversation. This has nothing to do. They're talking about protecting they're talking about protecting IP. And my mind's going through cyber and firewalls and architecture. And they're talking about legally protecting their intellectual property. And so I use those two anecdotes to tell you, you need to understand the language of the place you land, right? Because it's going to be different. And you can do it, but ask questions. And then I'm going to go back to my foot stomper point again is, find that good team. And then, from that good team, you got to expand out and build your team. There's certain people I go to in our legal department, and there's certain folks I talk to in our HR department, and there's certain folks I talk to. So, I have the government team that I'm on in Iridium, but then I have the much broader commercial side of Iridium and all the folks that support you in the legal and HR. And so constantly expand your team. And then when you think that team's built, now I build my team with, folks from the government, and I bring folks on from the team from other companies that, where do I go to find answers? Where do I go to link people together? Where do I go if I have a question about government contracts and those types of things? And, find out who those people are and bring them in on your team. And then it's not just about getting introduced to them. It's about building a relationship. I will just tell you, I work on the 11th floor of Iridium. We also have a 14th floor. So, and I used to call, this is like the old days of walking around the motor pool, right? You'd be amazed what a trooper will tell you in the motor pool that he's not going to come to your office and tell you. I had 30 years in it. It still amazed me some of the things people would tell their commander. So I'll get up at least once a day and I'll go up to the 14th floor, and our office is like this oval, and I call it running the track. I will just walk the oval, and if I run into somebody, I'll have a 2-minute conversation with them, and it may have nothing to do with work. It may be, how's their family? You'd be also amazed if you remember somebody's birthday is next week, or if you remember they have a special needs child, or if you remember that they like hockey, or if you remember, you'll build your team on something more than just, hey, I need something from you, right? And so, I don't know who, somebody coined the phrase leadership by walking around, right? And so, and I have a story about that I'll get to a little bit later. But my point is, build that team and continue to expand that team. And regardless of what you do, you're gonna be successful. I can't say it enough. I am a firm believer. I mean, use whatever idiom you want. There's no I in team. It's amazing how much people can get done when they don't worry about who gets the credit. I think Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, and together we do so much. Pick whatever thing you want to talk about when it comes to teamwork. I'm just a firm believer. I did it for 30 years in the Army. Why should things change because I'm doing something in another organization, right? And so that would kind of be my advice to Howie, whether you're doing government contracts or, I don't know, your Amazon Web Services, or, pick a career. I don't know, maybe you're building homes for Habitat for Humanity, right? Whatever it is, not only build that team for you, but, be a valuable member of somebody else's team, right?
Lee, I'm going to let you go because I know that's your that is,
Well,
you're probably like squirming in your seat right now.
No, no. Look, team building is something that I'm very passionate about, and team building is about people. And what I find, guys, is that for managers or leaders, I'll use sports as an example. All right, and I can use sports. I can use pro sports. At pro level, you're paid to win, right? And so sometimes coaches and leaders come into the sports world with the attitude of, I'm going to get whatever I need out of these guys to win the game. And I'll say, well, let's find out who they are as people. Let's find out what motivates them. Let's learn about their families. What does that have to do with winning? And I look at them and I go, everything, everything. If you want maximum performance out of your people, you need to know your people. If you want subpar performance, you can get that by being an a-hole. You can. All right. Mike Keenan, former NHL coach, known for being a hard ass. How much of a hard ass? He became a Russian citizen. He was born Canadian and became a Russian citizen because he liked their way of life more. That's how hard he was. No offense to any Russians out there, right? There are stories of players strangling him in the locker room. Guy won a Stanley Cup though, right? But my point is that, look, that does not work. There was a different time when he coached, obviously.
Yeah, it certainly won't work today.
It will not work today. You'll be arrested. But my point is this: I want to know the people. Like I'm heading over to the United Kingdom in a couple of weeks to help a team out. I'm calling. Howie, you probably don't even know this. I'm calling every single player one-on-one, all 24 of them, just to introduce myself. Here's who I am. Because I don't want to show up there and just do what I want you to do. Here's who I am. How are you? You got a family? Tell me about yourself. 15-minute calls. 15-minute calls just to get to know them. And it makes a massive difference. So just to your point, whether you're a leader or you're in an organization or you're looking for an organization, here's one for you, man. Interviews go both ways, right, Kirby? Like I always pay attention. What questions are they asking me? What questions can I ask? Did they even ask me if I can ask questions? Any interviewer worth their salt will ask you at the end of the interview, what questions do you have for me? And you should absolutely have some of those questions prepared. And it should not be, well, how much do I make on your hours? Don't ask that, right? Like, hey, do you have a family? Do you like working here? Right? I think that's a fair question to ask in an interview, right? So
I completely agree.
Yeah, there's stigma surrounding that stuff too. But look, at the end of the day, know your people, care about your people. If you want maximum effort, performance, outcomes, you have to know who you're working with, and you got to make it a team, almost a family. In a lot of ways, it is a family when you think about it. You find that, you're not going to want to leave where you're at.
Yep.
Period.
That's exactly right.
Let me reinforce a couple things as well here, and this is just a wonderful conversation, Kirby. This is why I love you like this. I tell you, man, you're just incredible, man. So let's go back to a couple things you said, right? Because it resonates with me because I was totally unprepared for this, right? So not only did I transition out of the military and go into a private sector business, which I had no knowledge about any kind of business principles, right?
Yeah.
Hell, in the military, we don't think about profit. We don't think about revenue, right? We don't think about, making money, right? Because you're given the resources you need. You're given your people, you're given a budget, you're given your equipment, you're given repair parts, whatever. Now you have to manage all that, but you don't have to earn money to pay your people. You don't have to earn money to buy the equipment. You don't have to earn money to buy your repair parts, right? In the private sector, we are a cost to whoever owns the company. And so you have to make enough money that not only covers your cost, but you have to make enough money that earns them profit and drives revenue, right? Totally foreign concept for us in uniform, right? And there's so many other business principles around that whole concept. So here's what where I'm going with this is, if you can take the time if you're going to go into the private sector and you're going to go into a for-profit company, it would behoove you to take some courses or whether online, in person, whatever, read books, but learn about basic business principles, accounting principles, and educate yourself about what it is to be part of a for-profit business, number one. Number two, if you're going into defense contracting, you kind of remind me of this, right? I had no knowledge of the defense acquisition regulations, of the whole request for proposal process, right? Nothing. So there is a phenomenal organization. If you're in the Army, I don't know if other services can leverage this, but the Defense Acquisition University out of Fort Belvoir runs a series of courses about the whole government contracting process, right? And maybe you can take some of those courses, right? And learn about the process so that you're not completely blindsided when you go into this, because I will tell you, and Rob Franklin, a co-owner, co-founder of the company I work for, told me this is a tough business. And I'm thinking, shit, Rob, I'm thinking to myself, come on, man, I commanded two brigade level units, man. I got this, right? Well, guess what? For 8 to 10 months, I was totally on my ass, man. I was totally on my ass.
You got to, and again, it's an ego that has been well earned, Howie, to be fair.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, I had the leadership and the management and I was a hard worker and I had the work ethic and I was a team player. I was all those things. But when it came to actually driving revenue, winning government contracts, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And it frustrated the hell out of me. And now, again, because I picked the right company, because I put culture first, because I put the leadership, assessing the leadership of the company I was working for first, I had two senior leaders, co-owners of the company that, and Lee has heard this before, that actually brought in a consultant for 3 months to help me learn all the things I just said I didn't know anything about. Right now, if I worked for some other systems integrator, you know what would happen? They would have put more stress, more pressure on me. Right. And then when I didn't produce because I wasn't producing before, and I'm not going to produce under more stress and pressure, they would have kicked my ass out of the company.
Right. And you would not have known why. And that's the other thing that kills me.
Well, even if they told me why, there's nothing I could have done about it.
But I'm saying that like it would not have put you on the correct mental path.
Right.
Yeah.
But I had two phenomenal, caring leaders who said, we got a guy who can add so much value to this company. So what can we do to help him? They brought in a consultant to teach me what I didn't know. And then in 3 months, I kind of got my legs underneath me. And then I was kind of off and running. You know,
Howie, I want to make it a good point. Kirby, these are how these conversations go. Sometimes we get off on tangents, but from a business standpoint, I was thinking about this because I've always been impressed by that story of, well, they reached out to somebody else. So for managers out there, business owners out there, if being a people person is not something that you do, and I got to say, there's nothing wrong with that, right? My wife is a massive introvert, right? Like there's just nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of perceiving things. Mm-hmm. If that's not in your, repertoire, find someone who can fill in your gap, right? Find someone who can do that because it's insanely important. It is insanely important to the health of your business. Right? So like again, I've met business owners, CEOs, I've met coaches, numbers guys, tacticians, brilliant people, but they are not personable. They have a very hard time communicating. And let's just say that their demeanor doesn't come across the right way, even though they're good people. Man, you need to find that yin yang there. Bring someone in, a professional that can help you with that, because you will not succeed without it. Right? One of the things I love about my business partner, we are complete opposites. He loves all the stuff that I hate to do, and I love all the stuff he hates to do. It's like a beautiful marriage, right? And I'm so thankful for that. And neither one of us has ever taken the approach, gentlemen, that it only works if I'm here. Never. Yeah. It doesn't work if we're not both there.
Well, and Leo, what I would say too is even if you do succeed, how much money are you leaving on the table because you're not even coming close to accomplishing or reaching your potential?
Right.
I mean, I consulted when I was with McChrystal Group for Fortune 50 companies. I'm not going to mention by name that were making billions.
Right.
But because they did not have really quality leadership, how much money could they have been making?
Well, look, I'll say this too, guys. I have a small to medium-sized business that I run, and Howie, at least once a conversation when someone hasn't met me, they go, "You live off that thing?" You live off that product? I go, yeah, it's a flagship company. How? I'm like, we have a great team and we built it over time and we're like a family.
Yeah.
It never would have worked if it was just one person. Anyway, Kirby, let's get back to you because again, these are all great business.
Yeah. And Lee, I'm going to suggest, because I think we kind of answered the next question already.
Right.
I would suggest maybe go into our last question.
Oh, well, before we go to the last question now.
Oh, it's that time.
Yeah, it's that time.
Kirby, you know what time it is, right?
What's
game time?
It is, right?
So Kirby, every guest on this show gets a book title.
Did you hear him? What?
What time is it? It's so every guest on our show, Kirby, I create a book title for them. So should you ever write a book, autobiography, whatever. And I've got a few for you. I don't have a subtitle though. Maybe you guys can help me with that. So the first one I wrote down is too many interviews. That one needs a subtitle. That's too many interviews. I like this one. You said walking the oval. I actually really like that. I like it when managers and people in companies get up and walk around once a day. That was a takeaway for me. It's one of those things that if you have a lot of restlessness in your mind, you go, I don't have time for it today. You have the time. You make the time to take 15 to 20 minutes to walk around, check on your people. In fact, even at my own companies, there are days I'm out or I can't. I feel so uncomfortable, like I missed something if I don't go and just say, hey, how you doing today? Right. I got a guy here right now, just as an example, just had his second child. So he's got 2 young kids at home and I know he's not sleeping. So I go check him every day. And this is something I've learned through time, Howie. You'll be proud of me for this, but I just kind of listen. I don't go, yeah, I've been there too much. I listen. It's hard. I'm with you. Right, but I like that walking the oval. This is, I think, the one though for you. There's a paddle dock one in there somewhere, but I couldn't think of that. I like this one. Do you have any idea what you're interviewing for? I think that should be your book title. Do you have any idea what you're interviewing? Maybe the subtitle is why I took too many interviews and how I succeeded in the private sector. Or 4 months on the river, 4 months on the Susquehanna.
There you go.
There you go. I like that one. 4 months on the Susquehanna. Kirby, yeah, you've been great. Let me jump into the last question. So our parent company, Pivotal Moments Media, and anyone who listens to this, hear this every episode. We seek to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. That is our mission. And I'll tell all you listening, Kirby, I'll tell you, every person in this organization I've worked with is super committed to that. I'm blown away by this team and the amount of volunteers that we have. But the truth is this, we all struggle with our own mental fitness at times to varying degrees. And if you're willing to share, have you had struggles with this? How do you work on this daily? What have you experienced? How do you manage it? What does mental fitness mean to you? And what advice do you have for our audience?
Yep. So this, I've been thinking through this a little bit. This is going to seem like I'm just going all over the map on this one, right? But hopefully there's a nugget in here for somebody. And so one thing I'll tell you, for your mental fitness, it gets back to, what's around you. And I'll start with, we talked about finding a good team, right? So I work for Iridium. Great team. I've used them in the field. Iridium works when nothing else works. And so there's a lot of reasons. The team was really the final reason I ended at Iridium. And here's how I knew I was at the right place. About 2 weeks into being at Iridium, I get a calendar invite from the CEO's secretary, his EA. And he said, hey, you need to come talk to this guy named Matt Desch, who's the CEO for Iridium. And I'm like, look, I can't even get IP right. What am I doing talking to the CEO? I'm just learning that IP is not internet protocol. So I go to the meeting and we sit in this, we sat, first we didn't sit in his office. We went in his side room. And for 30 minutes, the CEO of Iridium talked to me about a person, about, what's my family? What's my background? How am I doing? We didn't even talk about work. And so, but my point to picking that culture, picking that surrounding, I knew at that point I had landed in the right place, and so I knew my team. It was a great team, but now I had a sense that the culture of the overall company. And so to me, that was huge. And I get at it from this. I used to tell my kids, look, they'd be in high school and like, Dad, we want to go to so-and-so. Folks are doing this. I'm like, no, you're not going. And they're like, but Dad, I would never do X, Y, Z, right? I said, I absolutely know you would never do X, Y, Z. But here's the problem. If the person next to you is doing X, Y, Z, you're in what I call the splash zone. So when something bad happens to that person, you're in the splash zone for that. And you're going to, so you got to surround yourself with a good team. You got to surround yourself with good people. So I would say that's one, I guess, for mental health. The other thing I would tell you, find something that has a sense of purpose for you, right? A lot of us leave the Army, and our sense of purpose is the Army. And to sometimes, and I'm embarrassed to admit, even to the detriment of my family, right? I've been to places with the Army during anniversaries and birthdays and other things because it meant that much. And so find a place like that. I will tell you again, working with Iridium, we see numbers every year, how many lives Iridium saves because somebody pushed the SOS button on a Garmin and it goes through the Iridium network and people were able to find people. I used it in the Army when nothing else was working. And so I had a sense of pride with that. And so it might be your work, it might be your church, it might be your neighborhood, it might be Habitat for Humanity. You got to have a reason to get up in the morning. I've had veterans tell me, look, the camaraderie is not the same. And so I would tell you this, you're either in the wrong place, because I have a great sense of camaraderie. It's not that I don't miss the Army at times, but I'm on a great team with a great sense of camaraderie. But it's like Howie said, maybe you need to build the camaraderie, right? Maybe you need to invite people out for dinner. Maybe you need to set up the local social. Maybe you need to set up the bowling event. Maybe you need to set up the clean in the park day. Don't just stand there and say, there's no camaraderie here. I'm not happy. Well, be part of the solution, right? So you got to have a sense of purpose. You got to be surrounded with good people, a good team, a good sense of camaraderie. And then I would say, be careful about what defines you. Does the Army define you? Does the fact that you were a colonel or a sergeant major define you? Is the fact that something happened to you at some point in your life what's defining you? And I would tell you, I'm a firm believer, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it, right? So don't let those things define you. And that gets to my point, it's because life's not about you. Look up, look around. Maybe that person next to you is hurting more than you are, right? We had this guy when I was in JCSC, just couldn't get to work on time. And finally, somebody that took the time to talk to him, he had adopted 5 special needs children.
Oh,
and
wow.
His wife was dealing with that. And I'm not just talking about slightly handicapped children. I'm talking about severely handicapped. And he, every day, so he would leave work after busting his butt for us at JCSC, and then he'd go home and help his wife with 5 special needs children. And the guy was tired. And you know what? So how can you help somebody like that, right? How can you be part of the solution? So, look up, look around. Booker T. Washington said, look, if you want to lift yourself up, maybe lift someone else up, right? So how can you help folks? And then I will tell you, the other thing I hear from veterans sometimes is, you know what, I'm not in a leadership position anymore, or, it's just me. That's it. I don't command 1,100 people. And here's what I would say, and I'll tell you this story. A year after I had started working for Iridium, I ran into what I considered an old mentor at a show. And we were having a conversation. I was explaining what I did. And they kind of looked at me and said, oh, I thought you were going to be a leader. And, for an Army guy, that could have cut pretty deep. Their point was they thought I would be out managing a team and, leading a team and doing that kind of stuff. And here's where I personally felt like that person missed the mark. you don't have to be a supervisor to be a leader, right? You can be a leader in your community. You can be a leader at work. People are watching you because you're the old retired Army guy. The little boy next door or little girl next door is watching how you're treating the neighbors. People, you can be an example to people, whether you're a supervisor or not, right? You can teach people right from wrong, whether you're a supervisor or not. And so, those are just, to me, little mental twists to some of the common things I hear from veterans that aren't happy. I'm not a leader. I'm not the colonel anymore. I'm not the sergeant major anymore. There's no camaraderie out here. I don't really have a sense of purpose. Those are just my thoughts on all that feeds into your mental wellness. And then it gets into things like Howie was talking about. There's work-life balance. And I still get up in the morning, and we have a gym in the basement of Iridium that I go in, and I hit the gym. I don't say 5 days a week anymore, Howie, but yeah, I try hard. I try to read something. Go to your kids' events, your grandkids' events, invite your neighbors over. I think I heard Howie saying, it's a spiraling thing. If you start looking inward and things aren't going well, you start, things can spiral. It's just about life in general. And I'll give you, here's a kind of final thought on leadership. You don't have to be a supervisor to be a leader. On my computer right here is a note that I keep every day. A wise American named Howie Cohen said this one time, and I wrote it down, and I keep it on my computer to remind me every day. Once upon a time, he said, don't verbalize a negative thought. And I heard Howie say that on one of the podcasts here. And so I wrote that down, and I put it on my computer so that every time I'm sitting in a Teams meeting, every time I'm talking to somebody, that is rattling around in my brain housing group is be an encourager, help people out. And I guess, if you're worried about other people, that's a little bit less time you have to worry about your own problems, right? And so I don't know if that gets after what you guys are asking, but that's just my general philosophy on life in general. And so if there's any nuggets, anything anywhere in there that somebody can grab, then, I hope it helps.
I think it helps. I think that was a phenomenal answer. Look, there's no right answer to that question. And even if there is a great answer, it's not a guarantee that answer works for everybody. That's why we ask the question of everybody, right? But I loved your answer. And it speaks to a higher purpose of you're really not making excuses, right? And taking action. I wrote down here, this could be your book title too. It's like, you don't have to be a supervisor to be a leader. It's absolutely right. We can all be leaders all the time if we want to be. And like you said, I love that you said that your neighbor's watching. Somewhere along the line, I think we forgot that, right? Like that's a huge deal. My neighbor's watching.
So listen, not only are you giving us gold nuggets, Kirby, we hit a freaking vein of gold here, man. I mean, just to kind of stretch that metaphor as far as I can stretch it. Listen, I learned this from Lee. When I hear something, I just want to continue to reinforce for our audience that I think is so important, because this is what my passion is right now, right? This is what Lee's passion is right now. And how do we lower the high rate of veteran suicide, right? How do we lower the high rate of veteran homelessness? How do we lower the high rate of problematic transitions? And you hit it on the head. Now, you kept using the word, surround yourself with the right people, surround yourself with the right team. And I would just use, and again, you're absolutely right. I just can use a little bit different word, but it's because I think when we get out of the military, we're in a part of a community, we're in a tribe, right? And we lose that tribe, we lose that community, right? And so what we have to learn to do is replace that tribe, replace that community with another one, whether it's, like you said, your church, your workplace, your neighborhood. I mean, you could pick a million different, a sports team, a band, whatever, but replace that sense of community, replace that team with another one when you get out, because if you don't you start on that downward spiral, right?
I would say that's the root of the whole problem, Howie.
Well, but I think coupled with that though, Lee, is the sense of purpose, right? And
well,
Kirby
to me,
hit
that's
the
part
nail
of the
on the head.
community, right? Like, so I was actually, you're right, reading my mind, because to me, a great community has a sense of purpose, right? But I know what you're saying. But yes, if we want to look at those as those two things, and Kirby, you totally tapped on this. If you're not aware you're losing that, you are gonna have a hard time.
Yes. Well,
right?
Data shows it, right?
Right.
Data shows it. And again, I'll continue to reiterate these statistics, but we have 200,000 men and women getting out of the military every year, right? The likelihood of a veteran committing suicide goes up 2 to 3 times in the first 12 months when he or she exits the military. And I don't care whether it's after 4 years or 34 years, right? And the primary reasons are loss of sense of community, loss of sense of purpose, and a problematic transition, right? And so if a veteran understands that this could be a challenge and says, I need to replace my sense of community with whatever, I need to replace my sense of purpose with whatever, and then I ask for help, I own my transition, I put in the work, then you can eliminate the high stress and increase the success rate of your transition. I will be willing to bet you're going to have probably a pretty good life from that point forward and be successful, and your family's going to thrive, you're going to thrive, the people around you are going to thrive. But that's what we got to change here right now, folks, right? That's what because if we don't, we're going to keep losing really, really good men and women every freaking day. And that has to stop. That has to stop. Yeah, right.
We need those leaders too. I'll say that.
And listen, I appreciate you bringing out the fact of don't verbalize a negative thought. And listen, I just stole that from Trevor Moawad. May he rest in peace. What a great man he was. We lost him in September of 2021. It's from his book, It Takes What It Takes. His second book, Getting to Neutral. If you don't know who Trevor Moawad is, go YouTube him, listen to podcasts that he's been on. The guy is magical. Unfortunately, we lost him, but that's just the concept I took from Trevor Moawad, man. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Hey, Kirby, I cannot thank you enough. Listen, man, it just, Lee, you're absolutely right, man. It's so impressive. I mean, I can't say which episode is the best because everyone is so freaking good. And look, you have moved me today, Kirby, in ways that you can't even imagine, because I knew how good you were. I'm seeing things in you that I probably didn't even appreciate the way I should have because of your incredible sense of preparation, your incredible sense of research, your incredible sense of personal accountability is almost unmatched, man. And it is right from the time it was before you even got in the military. It was when you were in grade school, when you were a wrestler, when you were whatever. I mean, God, man, I'm so glad that we brought you to the White House Communications Agency and I got a chance to work with you. But hey, thank you for today. Because listen, anybody who listens to this, there is no way you can listen to this or watch this episode and not come out with a ton of value. And that's what we want to do, is bring value. So thank you, Kirby, for being here today, man.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Lee. I just want to extremely humbled to even get the opportunity, but I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to really meet you, Lee, and Howie. I always treasure the time we work together, and we're all products of a tribe, right? And I consider you part of the tribe. And you've taught me, just watching, as I said, you can be a leader, whether you're a supervisor or not, but just watching you go through the difficult situations we were in while we were in the White House, and do that with poise, and do that with professionalism, and do that with, I guess, an example that I could emulate. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you.
Well, I'll say this in closing, guys. One is that, Howie, the best episode we've done is the ones that you've been on. That's a good way of looking at it. And Kirby, to your thought, I should actually, you've just reminded me to thank Howie for never verbalizing his negative thoughts towards me. So I appreciate that 100%. No, Kirby, you've been a wonderful guest. And again, I think we accomplished our mission of, look, I learned something. So we've already accomplished our mission of somebody learning something.
We're
here
winning.
today.
We're winning.
We're
Yep.
winning. And for those of you listening, we appreciate you being here. I am amazed at the caliber of people that we continue to interview on this show, and the caliber of people that listen to this show, because it's how we said, our mission is very clear here of what we're trying to do. And all of you play a part in that. So thank you so much. So you've been listening to Life After the Military, a podcast produced by the Charlie Mike channel, which is powered by Pivotal Moments Media. And we hope that you receive value from the podcast. Again, we know you did because we did. And if you did, subscribe to us, rate us on Apple Podcasts, thumbs up, share, follow, pick the buzzword, but just do it and share with others to get the word out. And you can learn more about the organization, Pivotal Moments Media, at pivotalmomentsmedia.com. Take the time to check it out. We have a lot of other channels outside of this one that deal with mental fitness. We have education. We have inspirational, educational content. It's our homepage, pivotalmomentsmedia.com. Check that out. So for Howie Cohen and Kirby Watson, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes of Life After the Military soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Have a great day, everybody.